Across Australia, there are many different conditions. Apart from stubble handling and moisture retention, we also have, depending on the locations, many rocky areas, sticky soils, and of course soils that are hard as rocks. Queensland and northern New South Wales boast some of the stickiest soils in the country, and in South Australia and parts of Western Australia, many rocky areas are farmed. Now, many farmers, I can hear you. I can imagine what you're thinking. You're thinking these are some of the reasons you do not have disc machines. What I'm telling you, if you've got rocks, you need a disc machine. If you use a tine machine in rocks, apart from the obvious breakages, it's going to continue to pull up more and more rocks every year. It's going to be an ongoing argument every year between your tine machine and the rocks. And every year after planting, you've got to go around again and pick up the rocks that you've pulled up. And I'm saying, enough. Our machine will glide over the rocks and you won't pull up anymore. You've got to slow down in rocks. There's no magic involved. Many farmers in northern New South Wales, particularly in the Walgett-Tamari areas, have got some of the stickiest soils in the country. Many of them use our machines, and they can, in most instances, go right through the night. We're going to hear now from some farmers using our machines in those kinds of conditions, in the rocks, the sticky soils. Andrew Daniels from Yorktown in South Australia, hey, he knows all about farming in rocks.
As you can see here, this has been sown. There's a fairly big patch of limestone here. The seed is on 12-inch spacings. The rows are pretty much there and there. And you can see how well the muffler wheels work. As the disc is open, the soil, it's closed, it jumped over the stone, it's seeded right up to the edge of the rock, come through when the disc has tripped over. There's a few little grains along the top where it hadn't seeded, and then straight back in, and the muffler wheels come in straight behind. It looked like the machine would have travelled that direction. As you can see, we've got plenty of stubble here, and you can see where it's seeded right at the edge of this rock. If you scrape the dirt away, well, it's seeded right up to the edge, and then gone pretty much straight back in once it's tripped over, and really made use of like the soil either side of the stone. With the tine machine, once you start hitting back here, you pretty much lose your seeding back here. So in theory, we've probably got an extra 2 to 3 plants there, probably 4 looking at that. And you've got to think of also the disc is very gentle going back into the soil because it's rolling, whereas the tine, it's shearing out, and you know, it's spraying seed over it all directions. So you know, you're probably even going back in, probably gained 2 to 3 plants, probably those couple of plants there, if you can see that. So yeah, most of the stone areas you could be gaining 2 to 3 plants, and you work that over a square metre, it adds up to quite a bit of yield. And probably the other benefits with the disc in this country is no rocks to deal with at harvest time if the crop does go down. Also less stone rolling, a lot less maintenance on your machine.
This year really shone out with the rocks. We were sowing lupins into marginal moisture, and we had to chase the moisture. And if we hadn't had the disc machine, we would only be able to chip it in with our knife point system. And of course, yeah, the deeper you go in that sort of country, the more rocks you pull up. And this machine, we were able to dig at 3 inches, get the lupins into moisture, and of course they germinated and away they went. So that was a big point for us. We've got a lot of stony country. Yeah, that takes us 2 weeks probably to pick stones and whatever after seeding generally. And this year was nothing, so that was a big thing for us. Yeah, with the Ricochet certainly had no dramas with rocks. With the conventional tine machine, the amount of maintenance I had in that stony country. And same thing, where I've got rocks, I slowed down. I didn't bore through there doing 16 k's. I slowed down 5 or 6 k's. So just got to treat the machine as normal really. Otherwise, yeah, you wreck any machine if you're going to go over rocks at speed. And able to penetrate the country as well. We do half of our program dry, with canola and lupins are half our program, and wheat and barley are our other half. We go dry a lot, Yeah, when it's dry, we don't obviously chase moisture, so we're not going deep. We only chip it in. But yeah, with our soils the way they are, we are able to do that. We've seen that this year, that penetrates those, no worries at all. So.
But there's been no breakages, bending or anything. That's been a big plus. And we've got some rocky country. We've put it over rocky country, and I was a bit worried about whether the discs would break off or fracture or whatever. And yet they seem to ride over the rocks really well. That's impressed me. You know, the quality that's gone into building the machine has been really good. You know, we've had other machines that have all been welded on, modified for whatever reason, or had to been upgraded because they weren't good enough in the first place. I've been really happy with it.
Very sticky conditions, yeah. We sowed into some black soil, black sticky soil that sticks to your boots. You know, you walk in as a 6-foot man, you come out as a 7-foot man. It was difficult to sow into, but there was no problems with the machine. Like, if this machine couldn't go through it, I don't think anything would. It performed very well in the black sticking conditions. Towards the end of the sowing, we got into some pretty heavy black soil, and I thought that'd really tested out with mud building up on discs and scrapers and that sort of thing, but with the scrapers both sides of the disc, we didn't have any trouble there, and we had press wheel scrapers on it as well. Yeah, mud wasn't a problem at all. With the Tobin, it just didn't seem to matter what the conditions were. You could just keep sowing around the clock if you needed to.
Yes, the soils that were sticky was the black ones. So down next to the creek, the stubble was that thick that it held the moisture close to the surface, and it was very sticky. Yeah, very sticky.
All our soils here are heavy clays. We're on the Namoi River, so it's very heavy clay, and generally the clay content's too high. So, but yeah, it can get too wet and sticky on occasion, so you've got to time when your sowing is with how wet the soil can be, and sometimes it can be too wet for time machines, and that's why the bullets have been a help for us. They seem to get through the wet, sticky conditions very well. That was one of the biggest problems with the old disc machines that everyone had in the district. We've tried them before, different machines, and they just seem to block up too quickly, whereas the bullets with the larger disc seems to get through even before our times machines can start. Probably even a day at least, I'd say at least 24 hours before the time machines can start. Our 3 machines have scrapers on our transport wheels, our 4 frame wheels. This is generally because our soil, being heavy clay, gets very sticky and it sticks to everything. And if you don't have that, mud builds up on them and it becomes uneven, and your depth becomes very uneven. So we put our scrapers on those wheels just to get the layer of mud off. Like, a lot of times you won't be using it, but when it's too wet, they're very useful.